Welcome to Star Wars Week right here at the Capes and Tights podcast on capesandtights.com. May the force be with you here on this podcast and throughout the week on our website, capesandtights.com. We've got multiple podcasts this week. We've got multiple interviews with writers and artists within the Star Wars universe. We've got top 10 countdowns of comic book covers and TV show stuff and live action stuff, toy articles, all that stuff right here on capesandtights.com. For Star Wars Week. It's the May 1st through the May 7th, including stuff coming out on May 4th for May the 4th be with you. But to kick off Star Wars Week, we've got comic book illustrator and artist Will Sliney, who has worked on multiple Star Wars comic books, including Dr. Aphra's Annual #1, Solo, a Star Wars Story Adaptation, the High Republic variants here and there, Star Wars Galaxy's Edge, Star Wars, The Rise of Kylo Ren, which is some of my personal favorite Will Sliney stuff out there. He's worked on more recently Star Wars, the Halcyon Legacy over there at Marvel Comics. But also we chatted Hell to Pay, his comic book with Charles Soule, fellow Star Wars creator Charles Soule over at Image Comics, which has a few issues out right now. I believe 4 issues are out right now, with the 5th and 6th issue coming in the Shrouded College universe, which a lot of stuff is coming from over there at Image Comics with him and Charles. So check out this episode. But before you do, follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, as well as subscribe, rate, review, all that stuff over at Apple and Spotify. 5 stars, please. And check out the rest of Star Wars universe this week on Star Wars Week right here at capesandtights.com. Enjoy episode 103 right here with Will Sliney, comic book artist and illustrator. Thanks, everybody. Welcome to the podcast. How are you?
Very good. Very good. Thanks for having me, Justin.
Absolutely. First off, I want to start. So, when you do these podcasts, you do a little bit of research, try to find a little bit more. I obviously know a little bit about you, Will, but I don't know everything. So you do like Will Sliney interviews or whatever. And I have to say that 3 years ago, you did an interview with a young man on the way to you were going to the premiere, and I was thinking to myself, his name Daniel, I believe his name was. It was a YouTube channel interview.
It was his first ever interview as well, actually.
Yeah, I was thinking to myself, I'm like, I was like, part of me was mesmerized. I was like, forget Will's on this interview. I'm going to watch this kid. This kid was excellent. I'm like, this kid's got a future. And I didn't watch anything else. It wasn't like, maybe I should check out his YouTube channel some more. But I was like, wow. And it showed me the coolness of the comic book industry in general, like with cons and things like that, that you're willing to connect with younger people and people who just wanted to chat with you. And I thought it was a great thing. I don't know the whole story, how that happened.
Well, that interviewer has turned into a monster now. It's all gone to his head. He's gotten so popular. I'm kidding. I'm totally kidding. Daniel, he's, in fairness to him, he does some amazing interviews with like really big name directors and everyone in the comic book industry as well. He's done incredibly well. So yeah, it's been lovely to see.
It's all because of you, Will, right? But I was just laughing. I'm like, that's awesome. I was like, let's check this interview out. Yeah, and he was just so excited and so pumped about it too, which I think I would be too as a young kid as well. But yeah. So I mean, we like to start off these episodes too with getting a little bit of note about how you got into comic books in general. But like, were you been a comic book fan since you were a young kid, or was this something that came on later in life?
No, I definitely was. I wasn't fully into, let's say, the regular American market comics, because it just wasn't a thing I had access to. But what I would have had access to would have been reprints and annuals and things like that. So whenever I got my hands on something like that, that's what I would really, really enjoy. Just not fully understanding the comic book scene, if that makes sense. Yeah. And just everything that I would have had and would have been a part of. I used to love drawing. Whether it was video games, obviously I think Star Wars is a huge part of that. I think Star Wars really kind of encourages the watcher to be creative, even just like the whole notion when you were younger, because it wasn't the case with other stuff back then, was like, there's more to this universe than that's beyond the movie. And, why not go ahead and come up with some ideas of your own? And that's the way it kind of felt. And as the games and all, that would come out, I kind of devour those. And of course, comics and comic books then just was something, I could only, the first time I was able to get them regularly, I had to subscribe to America to the books, and they would come at crazy different orders, just being posted across the pond, as we say, or whatever. And But wherever I could get my hands on them, I would. And then a comic book store opened up in my town when I was 20 or 19, I think it was, and never kind of looked back since in terms of the collecting side of things.
And has this been I mean, you mentioned Star Wars in there too, but have you, like, you're an 80s kid, I'm an 80s kid. We were born into Star Wars. I mean, Star Wars was there when we were born. It wasn't like we had to, like, my parents and your parents had to like wait for it to come around. Has Star Wars always been something that's been part of your life, or is this something that came in after you started reading comics?
No, definitely. My earliest memory of it was so I'm from a tiny little fishing village, probably not too dissimilar to some places in Maine, I would imagine. But a van would drive in once a week with videos to rent. That was like our version of Blockbuster. It was some dude in a van driving around renting videos. And my mom went up to like get a video for us, and she came back and she had Star Wars, and I was like, "Oh, Mom, I've already seen this before." And I put it in, and it was The Empire Strikes Back, and I was like, "What? This continues? This is crazy." And I just remember that moment. I remember apologizing to my mom. Said, little did I realize she'd gotten probably one of the most inspiring movies to my, in fact, entire career. And that kind of just blew my mind. Just going back to what I said earlier, how this kind of thing carried on. And then I think the special editions, the way they re-released them in the cinema, came at a great time for me as well, when I was kind of really getting into drawing, and I kind of just lapped that all up and went to see all of those in the cinema. And any kind of thing that was around it, like you kind of, I don't know what the specific magazine was, but I just remember it had like all of the merch and all of the stuff that was surrounded the movies at the time. And I just wanted to draw every single thing that was a part of it, and kind of never really looked back since that particular time then.
I feel like that person driving around in the van is like the original Netflix, like when they used to deliver DVDs to your house. Like, it was
they were
first,
very, actually,
they were ahead of the curve.
Yeah. That's probably very true. I think it was a red van as well. Maybe it's the same person.
Van flicks. Like nowadays, I feel like if someone driving around with handing out movies out of a van is probably pretty sketchy, but back then it probably
definitely and a lot of kids going in and everything. So very, very strange times, but like that was just the way that it was. So yeah.
And how did this morph? So collecting comics and loving Star Wars, and how did this morph into an actual career that you actually get to do this for a living?
Yeah. Well, as I kind of, I always wanted to draw for a living, but didn't know how to do that. So like I'd be kind of redesigning video games as a kid, or drawing animated characters and drawing comics, again, not really knowing what that all was. But it was when I was in college that I started to really kind of deep dive into it and use the internet, use message boards. There used to be a forum called Digital Webbing, and I remember learning what the proper size of the page to draw on is, and bits and pieces. I kind of learned things like that. And I took out a loan and flew over to San Diego Comic-Con with a massive portfolio under my arm. And that kind of started the journey. And it obviously took a while to get to Star Wars, but I feel like there was a very kind of distinct ladder. And like every time I would get a new job, you kind of be going one step up the rung. And I was always doing Star Wars fan art. I actually was tried out a couple of times. They like Dark Horse were looking at me back when they had the Star Wars license. And then, I actually got to do some stuff for Titan, who are the UK publisher of the Clone Wars stuff. So I drew some stuff in the Clone Wars style. And then when I was inside Marvel, they knew two things about me. They knew I like Spider-Man and Star Wars, and I would practically advertise that whenever I could, or make sure to let that drop in. And there was a particular moment in my career when I'd done something like 60 issues on Spider-Man, and essentially the Star Wars editor went into the Spider-Man office and said, "We want to steal Will," and that was it. And I've been kind of doing a lot of stuff for them ever since, and it's been very, very enjoyable. Like some of this projects I'm very, very proud of, and who knows, there might be more in the future.
You've obviously you mentioned Spider-Man. You've worked on X-Men and a bunch of other things over at Marvel as well, and then you're doing the Star Wars stuff. They're both intellectual property things, so they're not creator owned. You still have to fit it within a certain bubble and so on and so forth. But I feel like the Star Wars fandom is a little bit more touchy on things. Like, if you were to change something in the Marvel with Spider-Man, or do Spider-Man a certain way, I think some of us fans would maybe not as much offended or be vocal about it as you would in the Star Wars universe. Is it harder to draw Star Wars in that sense because of that, or do you find it the same?
I've never really encountered any kind of backlash over that, but it's certainly like there certainly are a lot more rules, and it makes sense. Like a big example of that, I worked on Star Wars Galaxy's Edge, and this was I don't think this has ever happened in comics before, and has never happened since, except for the other book that I did like this. But basically, I had to draw a place that didn't exist. There were just, concept art drawings of it that one day was going to be a real place that people could walk around. So it was a very, very strange thing. And the ethos of that there is that like, it's really, really important to get your backgrounds right, to get your details right. And there's more of a level of responsibility because just like you said, you can get away with a lot more in the Marvel universe. They're kind of, Peter Parker's apartment isn't always exactly the same. There's no like official floor layout or stuff like that. I think they tried that at one stage, but it's not necessarily there. Or they'll always move and things will update and things will change around. Whereas, I remember specifically on Galaxy's Edge, I filled up the first page with I wanted tons of stuff to be going on. I wanted the place to be full because I felt like at the time this will always be a full street scene when anybody walks through there. But I put a Jew back in there, and quickly that like there's a fantastic team involved in all of the Star Wars books that will double check for all of these things. And one of the notes is Jewbacks don't go to Batuu, and that was a very, very fair note. So I took out my razor and got rid of that. So there's more. So that's the other side of it. There's more people to help you with that all the ways along, and it's important. It's more contained. It's not as big of it's rarer to be given access or to be a part of that Star Wars canon. And it's important to do it right. And I'm sure we'll chat about some of the other books later. And some of those, we had like so many people dialed into it, and we're making sure we were doing the right decisions with the books that we were doing.
And I guess it is slightly different anyway, because even the MCU nowadays and Spider-Man, they're not in the same realm universe. So like when you draw something that goes into a comic book that potentially could be either a real place or a place on screen, it can actually, there's a difference there. You have to, there is canon there in that sense. Whereas in the Marvel universe, what Spider-Man and Peter Parker do in the comic books is not always what's going to happen on the screen. And so do what you want in a sense, not fully do what you want, but do what you want in a sense, because they can change it later on.
In related to that, the way that the movies work, they'll take what they enjoy the most and they'll bring that forward. I've had bits where like the first time you see Valkyrie in Thor Ragnarok, was that the first one she was in? I think it was. Like she appears and there's this great shot of her on the back of her horse with the Pegasus or whatever, with the wings going up, and that is exactly the same as the first time I got to draw her in our first issue of Fearless Defender. So like they can take kind of shots and stuff that they like and they're inspired by, which is awesome. But yeah, certainly there's no direct link between the two.
not I said not like there is in the comic books, and I feel like that. And I've had conversations like I did a written interview with David Messina, and the same thing. I asked him the same thing: is it harder? Like you wrote. It's a little bit less, I think, with Kylo Ren, where you're drawing a character that is a fairly new character, and so it's a little bit easier for you to get away with a little bit of, changing some things. But like if you were to draw Han Solo, for example, or Luke Skywalker, you're pretty much in a bubble where you can have to stick.
Funnily enough, like those two particular characters are two of the hardest likenesses in the world to draw for whatever reason it is. Harrison Ford, both of his faces the sides of his face don't match up. And when you're like, that's kind of become a bit of an internet meme over the last little while. But I'll tell you what, I have known that for a long time, because drawing that man's likeness is so hard to do. It's crazy. He should not be a really handsome man. He just shouldn't. It just defies all logic. And all of that comes through when you're drawing him. So yeah, difficult ones to draw, definitely.
Well, speaking of that, I've had a conversation more recently with Liana Kangas, who has done interiors and covers and such, and so do you really like doing sequential interior art? It's like what you'd rather? Yeah, it's like I said, not that obviously you do it for a living, but like, is that something you'd rather do than over a cover, or is it really in the same ballpark?
Oh, no, honestly, absolutely. It's the whole my favorite the favorite part of for being a comic book artist for most of us, I think, is the storytelling. It's like it's you have the same responsibilities if someone hands over a script to someone to make a movie. You're the director of photography. You're like the choice of shot, the choice of the angle, all of the stuff, the way you tell the story, the way you pace it all out. That's a craft. It's an art, and I genuinely love it. And my career has definitely changed over the last 3 or 4 years, where I'm doing so much more stuff. I do a lot of stuff with TV and things like that now. And to me, like, as much as I love all of that, like the day when I get to sit down and start the day and there's a blank page and I get to draw that page by the end of the day, those are my favorite days, definitely.
And that obviously goes to another kind of sister question to that is, it seems like Star Wars, and I don't know if I realized this more recently than in the past, but Star Wars books, there's a different cover artist pretty much for most Star Wars books that there is an interior artist. Would you agree?
I haven't noticed, but I wouldn't be surprised, simply because drawing a Star Wars book is just harder.
Yes.
It takes more time. So, and it's the same deadlines, but there are a couple of reasons why. Like you really are, in this totally links back into what we were talking about earlier. You're standing on the shoulders of artistic giants when you're drawing an environment in Star Wars. So like all of the worlds, the ones that are already designed, have been designed by these incredible concept artists, and you want to pay them justice. And it's the same with, there's often ships, because they are wars in space. So you need to draw like these crazy, incredibly detailed ships, and it's really, really important. And you spend there's so much work and trying to make sure you get all of the details right. You do that genuinely the best that you can, and that's all extra stuff that's added on top. And every 4 weeks a new issue comes out, and it's 20 pages in every 4 weeks. So it's like you are working 12 or 13 or 14 hours a day every single day, a lot of the time, depending on the complexity of the book. And that's just the reality of it. So a cover is an extra day, and it's just not as easy to fit that in. That has been my, having, I'm pretty much 50-50 now in my time of Marvel, with the Marvel universe and the Star Wars universe. And it definitely, it's just more difficult to draw Star Wars books. Yeah.
And people have made a name for themselves. Like Phil Noto has done tons of Star Wars cover. People are just like, that's the person who's doing a Star Wars cover. You just assume it's going to be that person doing a Star Wars cover. So it's a little bit different in creator-owned stuff and independent stuff. But I also saw, which we'll talk a little bit later too, but you're not doing the covers for Hell to Pay. The cover A's at least for Hell to Pay as well. So yeah. Well,
I am doing a bunch of covers for that one, but because again, I have more time, so I'm able to do that. We kind of did that as a strategic choice in terms of getting exposure for the book to go out, and then as the next volume starts to get announced and stuff, there'll be different strategies for covers or different ones with those then too.
That makes sense. A ton of sense. Is there a Star Wars character? You just mentioned Harris Ford, but is there a Star Wars character in general you really enjoy illustrating?
Well, the one I've always wanted to, my favorite one has always been. I can't say who it is because it'll give it away, but I was offered a chance to draw this character and I didn't have time to draw him, and it really killed me to turn it to basically turn it down. But that's just the way it goes sometimes. And I've drawn a lot of them, so I guess there's not a lot left there to figure out. But there's certainly one that I've always wanted to do. And
I'm not going to say it. I probably could guess it, and maybe I'll say it afterwards just to see if I'm right.
Sure.
But no, but yeah, I probably guess it on that one. But yeah, I mean, you've gotten an ability not just to draw and illustrate for some like I said, is there a pinch me moment where you're like, I get to draw Spider-Man and I get to draw Star Wars universe? Like you wake up and go, oh my God, this is my job.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And genuinely, those were the dream jobs. Like they really, really were. If you asked me, and we were always, there was a bunch of us kind of growing up together that all wanted to draw comics. And if they asked me what I wanted to do, it would have been Spider-Man and Star Wars. And it's bonkers the way that it turned out that way. I even remember after like my first year at Marvel, I was working on the Defenders. And, I was talking to a friend of mine. I was like, geez, I'd love to get a couple of pages of Spider-Man. And they're like, there's no way you'll never get a chance that quick. And the next day I got a phone call and ended up drawing 60 issues up in a row. And it literally went from there straight to Star Wars. Like, so it's all pinch me stuff. And then And that's actually what's been quite enjoyable about Star Wars, is how the projects have gone and how they've grown and how I've been involved with them. And they've given me some amazing moments, like that Galaxy's Edge one. You know, I was brought over to the theme park before it opened, and I literally ran around that theme park by myself for a day, just running around like crazy. It was just this insane experience. And I kept laughing to myself going, who would have thought that comics can do something like this? And the biggest one for me will definitely be Kylo Ren, and how big that felt to be a part of doing it as it was coming up to the launch of The Rise of Skywalker. And we were essentially handed the keys to tell such an important part of this character, a huge element to him, and they trusted us with that story. And it's definitely the one that I kind of get stopped and told about, or asked about the most at conventions when it comes to Star Wars, definitely. So yeah, like I still am delighted to have been a part of that. Yeah.
Oh, it's the Kylo Ren thing. I will say that. So I had this moment in my lifetime trajectory of my comic book fandom was into it a little bit as a kid. My brothers were more into it than I were. My dad would buy me a comic book if I was like sick with some ginger ale, because that was like a cure-all was a comic book and some ginger ale. And as I got older, I got like, okay, I'm too cool for comic books, if that makes any sense. There was this moment where I'm like, I feel like and then it's now it's my life now. But like there was this moment in the middle there. And then when I moved back to where I live now, I live in Maine, and I lived in Massachusetts for a little while, and I moved to Maine. And one of the first books that I had saw that was Star Wars related was The Rise of Kylo Ren on the shelf. I was flipping through, and I was like, wow, it was like the movies are around and all that stuff, and I really got into it, and I fell in love with it. And I realized how much more there is in the Star Wars universe, not just in comic books, but in books, in fans, fan made stuff and all that stuff. And maybe fall right back in love with the Star Wars universe. And we've talked about it on the podcast too before with other people. It's so great that there's so many options for people, because you can't just sit there and watch movies all day. It's not possible. Like a comic book, I went away this weekend, like I mentioned, to a comic convention. I'm not going to bring my Star Wars movies with me, but I can bring a comic book with me and read that over again. And so there's just a way to expand your entire universe by reading all these different things, from books to comic books to movies, TV shows, video games, all that stuff. And for you to be able to tell a story that is in canon with the movies, that is like, it gives you a little bit more information that you need to know to kind of understand who Kylo Ren and stuff like that. Co-creating characters like Ren with your buddy over there, Charles Soule, and it's just great. It's just great, and I love that book altogether. And I can mention, it's a book that I'm still looking for my first printing of number one, which is really hard to get.
Good luck.
Yeah, it's really hard to get, but.
Like genuinely, that's it. That's the nail on the head with it there. And it's, if you went back and if you told me when I was going in to watch like those special edition versions of the movies that I already loved, that one day there's going to be a small little corner of that universe and you're going to be responsible for creating it, it just would have blown my mind. And I've loved every part of it. I've really liked the people that I get to work with, and the team that are inside there at Marvel that are in charge of Star Wars. They really care about it as well. Getting to meet the teams at Lucasfilm and stuff like that. It's just been big grin on my face the whole time. So yeah.
Well, it's funny because it's one of those things. Once you do this, you've now drawn Spider-Man. So forever, your name has to be associated with this. It's like they can't scrub your name from the history books. Like, you've done it. It's the same thing with Star Wars though. Now, like, you think about it, like when people go back and talk about the creators of things, or you're gonna be part of that, and that's an amazing thing to have happen. But now you're also starting to expand on that, and I'm guessing Hell to Pay and your partnership with Charles on that came from the Star Wars comic books, my guess, right?
Well,
you guys met?
No, we've known each other
really?
for a long time before that, which makes it even nicer. We both knew each other before we broke in. I would have hung around the same kind of external circle to the world of comics as Charles, and got to meet him when I was over in New York. And we've always had talks about working with each other. And then bang, it happened with Kylo Ren, which was amazing. But that's the thing though, we had never worked together. So even though we might have been friends, it might not have worked, but it worked very, very well. A great collaboration, like first time kind of working on a book where like I would be on the phone for hours while drawing things, and we'd be chatting away through, and we had so much responsibility on us. Like, I even remember like getting to design, Ben Solo, I guess, before he's Kylo Ren, his the different outfits, the iterations, the ships, what Snoke looked like, and all of that planet and all of that stuff. The first appearance of the High Republic was in there. I knew Charles was hinting at something. He was like, "This panel is important. We'll make sure this is kind of cool." Not telling you what it's for, but it's going to be good. Like that whole process was great. And it kind of ended, it was like, geez, we should really do something more. And then, in fairness to Charles, when the pandemic came along, and I was actually on the Rise of Skywalker at that time, and that book got paused at the time, and that's the way the whole world was at that. I was just about to have a baby. It was our second kid, and it seemed quite strange as it was happening. And that very day, Charles got onto me. He's like, "Hey, we've been talking about this image book for ages. Why don't we do it?" And that's what it was. And what started off as just Hell to Pay very, very quickly evolved. And we realized, like Charles obviously has been involved in being an architect of the High Republic. And now it's like, well, why don't we, create our own universe and see if people like it? So, and it's been a good start.
As I say, I think people like it. I'm glad you didn't say you knew Charles from before because he was your lawyer.
No. Well, he was an immigration lawyer, so it could have worked if I ever tried to move over there. You never know. Might have been that way, but no.
I was laughing because he's a lawyer. Does he still have his license? Is he still a practicing lawyer?
I don't. Well, he's definitely too busy to be practicing.
I didn't know if he could. If he wanted to.
I have no idea.
We had Mark Guggenheim on as well recently, and Mark is also a lawyer.
No way.
Yeah, and I was just laughing. I'm like, is that sort of like a prerequisite to work on a Star Wars book right now? Is you have to be a lawyer and you have to you have to be a comic book writer now too, as well as how it works.
Yeah.
But yeah, so Hell to Pay came out in 2022. I loved reading solicitations to these things, but like, what would you, if you're pitching it to someone, what is Hell to Pay in your mind?
Well, very quickly it switches to what the Shrouded College is. And I think that was our big kind of we wanted to do it as a bit of a bait and switch, and that like once you read issue 1, you realize, whoa, this is a bigger universe called the Shrouded College. And that to us is kind of like a supernatural Mission Impossible. You want people to feel like, and they're these teams, and it's almost like they're going to Hogwarts for the first time, or they're being recruited for the Avengers, but once they're inside that organization, the Shrouded College, maybe even though they're fighting on the right side of things, it might not be the nicest life to be there. So maybe they want to get out, and what we're going to be doing over the course of it. So I've finished all of Hell to Pay. And we're working on the follow-up books to all of that now, and we're a good bit ahead actually. And the way that it's going to kind of work is it's going to go around and tell all of these different stories within the Shrouded College universe, with these different areas of it. So if you can kind of picture, I'm trying to get into the middle, if you can picture like a hexagon of like the 6 books, like you can kind of read anyone wherever you want, and then the 7th one would be the one that will pull from all of them. And kind of bring it all together. And it's just been an absolute roller coaster on how this thing has grown beyond what we had ever kind of dreamt for it to kind of be, and how quickly it has. And as Hell to Pay wraps up now, I think the next 2 issues are coming out.
April 5th is the first. April 5th issue 4 just came out. June 7th is issue 5. I don't know. Is it 5 issues or 6?
No, 6. I think 6 is out in June then as well.
Yeah. Okay.
So
at the end of June. Yeah, you're right. It's like June 7th and like June 28th or something like that.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. Yeah. So and those will be the first kind of 2 issues that are coming out now that people know about the big deal with Universal and Seth MacFarlane and Peacock and stuff. And so it'll be kind of fun to see how it grows because of that. And it's a lot of fun. And like, it doesn't mean it's the end of Star Wars stuff for me. Absolutely not. But it's a total different muscle, and it's quite enjoyable doing that, and it's the dream balance for me, so you can kind of build yourself up and you get to work on these characters and stories that you genuinely love when you're over with Marvel, and then hopefully people will jump across and follow you to your create your own book, and that's what it's been. And you couldn't really do, I think, a book like this or a project like this if you didn't get on very well with the person you were doing it, because we're essentially tied together for many years. And like we tend to do Star Wars stuff together as well. So like I can't see myself doing a book with anybody else for quite a long time.
Exactly.
So
Yeah. But like, let's be honest, even if you didn't know him, I don't think Charles is the kind of guy that you wouldn't have been able to get along with. He seems like a super nice guy.
The man he's just never loses his cool, actually, which is, because work things get stressful and everything like that. Like that's what's been so impressive about him the whole way through it all. And he tends to pop over to Ireland, which is a plus as well. So
did he pop over when he was over in London? Did he go up to visit you? No,
he was over this summer.
Okay.
This was so I was actually in the States.
Okay.
So for different reasons.
Yeah.
So,
and obviously you have a colorist, Rachel Rosenberg and Chris Crank doing letterer. Is that just how a team came about? Like, how did that come to?
Yeah.
How did those two team members join the team?
So Rochelle, we've worked together tons in our work in Star Wars, but actually, well, more Spider-Man actually.
Yeah.
But she did do some of the later Star Wars stuff. So the original idea when it was just Hell to Pay was the unique kind of angle was, and this is when I was kind of getting big into learning how to YouTube and to live stream and stuff like that. We were streaming it on Twitch. So like the first issue was pretty much all drawn on Twitch, and Rochelle was kind of getting into that world as well. So she was perfect for it, not only because we were pals as well, but like she live streamed her pages and stuff. But as it grew, well, essentially what happened was as I was doing all the live streaming stuff, I got offered my own TV shows, and that's kind of hasn't allowed me to spend, because when you're live streaming a page, you probably can do it at half the speed of what you would normally draw it at, because you're hanging out and you're chatting and stuff like that, which is great and it's so much fun. But all of a sudden, this whole new career for me came of making how to draw TV shows over here. And so that basically got rid of, unfortunately, the live streaming side of things. But I guess it makes sense when all of a sudden you go from what's just, a single story comic to this universe that's, Universal now are a big partner in it as well. And they want to know what's happening before we live stream it out, which is totally fair as well. Yeah. So
it's pretty funny though, because like you mentioned the whole like half speed thing. I get my tattoo artist always books me for like an entire day, even if my tattoo is only going to take 2 or 3 hours. And it's not because I have a lot of work to be done, but we're huge nerds. We're friends. Yeah. We basically don't see each other outside of his studio now, because he's got a family, I've got a family, and so on and so forth. So it's like, I know for a fact I'm going to take 3 times as long to do this tattoo than it actually takes me. So I need to just book the entire day. And I'm like, wait, hold on. You're not charging me hourly, are you?
Yeah.
Like, that's not fair. Just because you're talking means I have to pay longer.
No, but it's genuinely true, and there's only so many, honestly, up until literally the last couple of days has been the busiest I've ever been in my entire life. Over the last 2 years, it's been nonstop stuff. And I just basically finished a TV show today, which is lovely. Sorry, so it's just been, it's been too busy to do all that stuff. Yeah.
I mean, does this give you the opportunity also to potentially, like we mentioned, the covers versus interiors thing? Do you think you'd do like some Star Wars covers here and there, or Spider-Man covers here and there? Because
I've done them. Yeah, no, I have done them. It depends on time. Honestly, now is what it is. Like, it's weird. I mean, the first time in my life, I'm turning down Star Wars projects. I'm turning down Marvel projects. I'll do bits and pieces of covers here or there if the time is here. I actually have a Spider-Man 2099 cover that's coming out pretty soon, so I'm looking forward to that one. But it's just time, and I like Hell to Pay, Shroud of College variants and stuff like that. So some of the covers I'm doing 3 or 4 issues, some of the issues I'm doing 3 or 4 covers too. You'll notice as well, if you're reading the books, like we've never hit 20 pages. Like, I'm drawing 30 pages in some of the issues and stuff like that as well. And that's just, that's where the time goes, and it's balanced. Charles is extremely busy as well. He's balancing all of the Star Wars stuff. Curse Words is now done, but everything that we're doing from Shroud of College, his own novels as well. He has a Kickstarter right now for his current one. And then for me, it's Shroud of College, whatever kind of Marvel stuff I can kind of fit in. And like in the last 2 years, I've made 82 episodes of TV, and that was a whole new kind of thing. So balance,
It's down. Yeah, I
what it's
mean,
all about.
you mentioned working with Charles and things like that. I was first introduced to Charles. My wife is a fan of his books. Like I didn't even know. Like, I like
That's cool.
my wife's like, oh, like I love his novels. I'm like, well, who's this guy? So I basically Googled him. Like, wait, hold on a second. He wrote some issues of Hulk. Like, what's going on here? How did I not know about this person? And then it spun off from there. Now I've got like most of curse words and other things that I've like figured out in the time frame of all this stuff. But now obviously all the books and stuff like that. He is a stupidly busy person.
And he doesn't miss as well when he does so much stuff. That's the thing. What's crazy about Charles, and like I'm just learning so much just by listening to him talk and the way he talks about story and stuff like that as well. It's inspirational.
We live in this small community here in Maine, in Bangor, Maine area, which is like the center part of Maine. And we don't have a lot of stuff. My buddy and I, when we went to New Hampshire, we're like, oh my God, a Whole Foods. Oh my God, this. Like, it's just because we don't get that here. But like, I've told the story before on the podcast, but like 6 months ago or so, like maybe sometime in the fall, I was just scrolling through Instagram and I scrolled up and there's a picture of Charles in front of Stephen King's house here in Bangor, Maine. And I was just like, what the hell? I look over at my wife. I'm like, Charles Soule's in. And she's like, what? So he ended up stopping by my buddy's shop who I was with this weekend, Galactic Comics and Collectibles, as just, hey, I'm going to stop in and say hi and buy some comics, whatever. He was nice enough. I'm like, he didn't need to buy the Something's Killing the Children Volume 2 from the shelf there. He just wanted to support him. And it was pretty great. I was literally 15 minutes behind when he left. I was like, are you kidding me? I was like I walk in the door, he was like, oh, by the way, you know who just left? I'm like, you asshole. But no, it was really cool to see that. And like I said, it was a unique experience for us because we're not like a throughway. We're not like, it's not like a destination. I mean, he was looking for like first edition Stephen King's, and we're known for Stephen King, so it did make sense in a small sense, but it still was kind of funny. And it's one of those things that this guy's local comic book shop, he doesn't get many. This is not New York City. This is not a comic shop in New York City.
Yeah,
you get all
totally
kinds of
understand.
people. Yeah. And so it's really nice to see that. And Charles was an absolute gentleman to him too. So I'm sure I don't need to tell you that he's a gentleman. You know that. But I'm pumped about Hell to Pay. Hell to Pay has been great. It's 4 issues have been out so far. I'm excited for the rest of the Shrouded College and all that stuff. Is it now you just have to draw things that are now on TV? Is that how it works? Like with you drawing Star Wars stuff, you're drawing Spider-Man stuff, and now you're drawing this thing that's eventually going to be on TV or a movie. Is that just how it works? You need to have a motion picture version of it.
I'm all right with that, I guess.
I mean, but this is your own property in a sense. Like you get a little bit more control over what you draw, what you do. So like there's some critics, like obviously because you have this deal, you're gonna have some people say some things about what you can and cannot do. But like most of it's just between you and Charles, I'm guessing, right?
No, very much is, and that's what's quite fun. Like I'm working on designs for the 4th book right now. Like that's how much we're building the world, and it's hilarious to me thinking, oh, I've drawn that might end up on telly in a few years. You know, it's mad. It's just genuinely, it's just exciting. It shows like it's good in terms of comics as well, that it just creates this massive kind of a buzz for it. Like, you know, like we had comic book shops around the world the day the news came out telling us like, how do we get more copies of this book? This is all selling out or whatever. So I think with this one, with the first one, the trade is going to do very, very well, which is important. And it helps us, and it'll be very, very interesting to see how book 2 launches, and each one will be its own new story. Yes, there's some exciting times ahead with it all.
That's awesome. I'm so excited for more of it. And the universe building thing is a huge thing. I think is what it's been successful for Marvel, DC, Star Wars, you know, all these places all over the years, is having multiple avenues to tell multiple stories and offshoots and things like that. Speaking of the Star Wars, with the things like Yoda coming out and Han Solo and Chewbacca and all these different High Republic and all that, like you have so much you can read. It's pretty cool that you can do that with the Shrouded College.
You can tell a story anywhere if you can write a good story, you know. And the more you flesh out that world, the more opportunity for stories it creates.
And not that I want to spoil or anything, is it going to be you and Charles basically doing all of the books, or is other people?
No, actually, no. It's going to widen out as this all expands, and that's going to be fun as well. So we'll always be, I guess, the architects of it. But I think it would be great if this kind of expand. If this, you know, it starts like this, and then the hope then is one day that it might start to go like this and get to tell more stories within that universe. That's kind of the dream for us in it as well, you know. So we'll see how that goes. Right now it's just the two of us, but it would be amazing if it just kept on growing.
It was just funny as I say that if you have more than like a bunch of books, you don't have the time to do them all. So you will need help.
That is it. Well, that is it. You know, and if we ever wanted to have two out at the same time, why not? You know, as our universe grows, you know, there can be, you know, there's 50 Marvel books every month or whatever it is. You know, so if we want to have 2 or 3 or 4, if this thing grows and if the audience is there for it, then great. And that's kind of the hallmark of all of the successful, you know, creator-owned books that are out there, is that other titles can go on at the same time. Like I see Turtles in the background, and I love the fact that, you know, the IDW Turtles book, you know, the Shredder book comes out at the same time, and all of these different stories will come out, you know, and that's because people are drawn to the story. So it demands that you have more books out then.
And Todd's been doing that over at Spawn now recently too, with King Spawn and the Scourged and all that stuff, his whole Spawn universe as well. And he's not writing them all. So it's drawing them all. So it's really nice in that sense too. So it's there's a space for it. And isn't it the Massive Verse that's also been out there now too? And like there's all kinds of cool different universes. There's offshoots in the independent comic books, which is pretty cool.
We haven't gone into the multiverse in our one yet, but I don't think you can do that after one book. It would be hilarious if we did.
You started that way? Yeah.
Yeah.
You just launch with 6 books, all in the same universe, all the same day.
It does it the opposite way. It shrinks down to 1. That's actually a pretty cool idea.
A Benjamin Button of comic books where you like go backwards.
Yeah.
But and so Star Wars, now wrapping things up here. You're obviously working on some stuff here and there, and you're turning down some stuff. The Star Wars universe as a whole, obviously, Celebration just happened. Anything? Anything cool that you saw that came out of that weekend in general that you're looking forward to? Movies, TV shows, anything? All of it?
All of it, definitely. Like I definitely am very, very fond of I keep forgetting the name, the new animation for
Tales of the Jedi.
It called again? Tales of the Jedi, because I have a 4-year-old son. So like I've been showing him like the little shorts and stuff like that as well. So that I can't wait. That's going to be his first Star Wars experience, that show is perfect timing for me as a dad for him. And it's funny, like I have it all planned out what way I would show him the movies and stuff like that or whatever. But that one is top of my list because of that. Everything else, then there's just so much of it. And my problem is catching up. I actually still have 1 episode left of Andor to watch, so I'm way further behind on the Marvel stuff. And I keep like people keep talking about what's happening in the Mandalorian. Like, oh my god, they're setting up for something that there's no way is not going to be spoiled for me. But there's no way I'll catch up for whatever it is that's happening. I even saw an amazing image today that's from the Mandalorian. You know, the way they show the character sheets or whatever it is, it just looks like the coolest thing ever. So I would have loved to have gotten to see that in real time. It's too much stuff.
It's true. You're right, but it's like one of those things we also can't stay in our own avenue or our own lanes, in the sense of like there's not too much stuff if you're just a Star Wars fan. But like none of us are just Star Wars fans or just Marvel fans. Like we're
spoiled. I'm genuinely not complaining with it as well. Like it's just cool. Like, you know, there's too much stuff to keep up. That's mind blowing. So coming from, you know,
one of the small benefits of it is that Marvel owns Lucasfilm or Disney owns Marvel and Lucasfilm, so that they are somewhat smart about scheduling when things come out, at least the TV shows. So at least like we're like, okay, we got Mandalorian now, and then we're gonna get some Star Wars stuff this summer, or sorry, Marvel stuff this summer. It's not like they're trying to say, oh, you need to watch the Mandalorian right now and Secret Invasion and this and that. They at least have the ability on Disney Plus to spread it out a little bit so that we could have time to. I know it's not for me; it's so that people subscribe the entire year. But that's for me. I see it as a thank you for spreading it out for me. But I know why they do it that way. But no. I really appreciate you coming on talking Star Wars. Hell to Pay. We mentioned Hell to Pay. 4 issues are out right now. And then issue 5 comes in June, and issue 6 comes in June as well. 2 or 3 weeks apart. And then I'm guessing you're gonna do it in trade format, right? Image is gonna put out a trade for that, I'm guessing.
Oh god, absolutely. And I think once that wraps, we'll be announcing what's coming next. So that's quite exciting. So
that's really exciting. And then like I said, if you go back and try to find that Rise of Kylo Ren's great stuff. You did in 2002. You did it was a Star Wars, the Halcyon Legacy.
That was last year. That was the last Star Wars project that I was a part of. Yeah.
and you worked on Galaxy's Edge and the Solo thing and Dr. Aphra Annual. You've done some work on the inking and stuff, and so you've got all kinds of stuff in Star Wars. So just you have a Wikipedia page.
Do I? Yay, that's good. Oh, cool. Okay.
So you can find out some places on there and the variant covers and stuff like that, but also Spider-Man and all that stuff as well out there as well. So, and you've got your stuff over, if you're over in, is it Sky TV? Is that broadcasting just in Ireland, or is that all over?
No, Sky is basically all of Europe. They're parts of Comcast actually, but they are over here. And then I'm on RTE with a different show. That's the Irish national broadcaster, but they're starting to spread out around the world. So there's been a few. I'm starting to hear myself translated in different languages, which is quite hilarious. So they are, they're finding legs around the world now. It's been keeping us busy, definitely.
That's awesome. That's so awesome. So keep up the great work. You're doing great work there. I'm super excited for more Hell to Pay. I'm super excited to see if anything else comes out of the Star Wars universe for you. That'd be amazing too. And I'm a huge Marvel fan, so that's always been great. So you check all the boxes. You're good.
Thanks a million, and thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Enjoy. I know it's not, it says enjoy the rest of your day. It's probably enjoy a nice cup of tea and then go to bed, but that's
pretty much.
Thanks, Will.
No worries. Thank you.